At 3 a.m., the special attention notification sound pierced through the darkness. James Lawson, my husband, who hadn't posted on social media in 4 years, had just updated his status. What an adorable little foodie. The attached photo showed a pair of pink cat ears, glaringly vivid. Comments from mutual friends were flooding in. Dude, you forgot to switch accounts. Just like that, James's new post disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, only to show up moments later on Sophie's feed. Sophie Jones, the new content creator at his company. Then James's name lit up my phone screen. In the past, I would have already taken screenshots and called him first to confront him. It would have inevitably ended in a heated argument, but this time, I calmly watched his call go to voicemail without answering. When James got home, I was nearly asleep on the couch. He took off his coat and bent down to change his shoes. Why didn't you answer my call? James rarely tested the waters like this, unless he knew he'd done something wrong. Without looking up, I mumbled dismissively. Accidentally fell asleep. Didn't hear it. Had to work late. That's why I'm late. You don't need to wait up every time. Don't make yourself feel so insignificant. In the past, I would have passionately argued that I did it because I loved him. But now, there was no point in arguing anymore. James handed me a square velvet box, gesturing for me to open it. Today was his company's IPO day. To celebrate, I'd left work early as usual, bought groceries, cooked dinner, and waited for James to come home. But after waiting most of the night, there was no sign of James, who had promised to come home early. I pretended not to notice the strong Korean BBQ smell on him, and placed the box carelessly on the coffee table. I recognized this box. It was the same one from when he missed my birthday. Even the designer logo hadn't changed. James stared at the box for a moment, his forehead creasing, his voice turning stern. Rachel, can you stop being difficult? Buying me jewelry was James's usual way of making amends. If I accepted the gift, whatever unpleasantness between us would be swept under the rug, never to be mentioned again. But now I didn't want to take his easy way out, which naturally made him angry. Let me put it on you. Not giving me a chance to refuse, he opened the box and took out the bracelet to put it on me, but froze when he saw an identical one already on my wrist. Just leave it. Let's go to bed. We have work tomorrow. I pulled my hand away and stood up from the couch, ready to head to the bedroom. Should I have my assistant help you pick out a different one another day? I replied coldly. No need. When James suggested we go to work together, perhaps feeling guilty about buying the same gift twice, I didn't refuse since I wasn't feeling up to driving. James stood in front of his car, his brows deeply furrowed. At some point, he developed a strong aversion to me riding in his car, especially in the passenger seat, and had pressured me into buying my own car, probably because I'd acted crazy fighting with him over the right to sit in his passenger seat, until he got fed up. But now, his car was filled with cat plushies and cute stickers, all for Sophie. Even the passenger seat had been specially redesigned to make it comfortable for petite Sophie. Still, seeing me waiting, he finally opened the door and started moving the plushies to the back seat. Watching him go back and forth, I spoke up with a frown. Never mind, I'll go to work by myself. James tossed the last cat plush into the back seat. Let's go together. Sophie just likes decorating things. She's playful that way. Don't take it personally. Looking at the pink seat that clashed completely with the car's interior, I declined. It just felt wrong in my stomach. I opened my own car door, but James quickly stepped in front of me and slid into the driver's seat. I'll drive. We agreed to go together. I watched him for a moment, catching his brief look of discomfort. So he did realize how inappropriate the passenger seat modifications were. As James started to explain, I cut him off. We'll be late. Just drive. He pressed his lips together and started the car. While waiting at a red light, his phone rang. It was obviously a custom ringtone. A pitiful voice came through, with faint sniffling. James, my tummy really hurts. I think I got sick from yesterday's food. Can you take me to the hospital? Please come quickly. You're the best. After hanging up, James didn't even glance at me or say a word. He just pulled over to the curb and quickly unbuckled my seatbelt. His tone left no room for argument. An employee isn't feeling well. I need to check on her. We're almost at the office. You can walk the rest of the way. Before I could even close the door after getting out, James had already driven off. Honestly, nobody walks to work anymore these days. When the light turned green, a delivery guy on his scooter, not expecting anyone at the crosswalk, turned and crashed right into me. I ended up with scrapes all over my hands, feet, and forehead. The nurse cleaned my wounds and applied a bandage to my forehead. Keep it dry for a few days, she advised. No baths, and make sure to apply the medication as directed. After leaving the hospital, I grabbed an Uber to work. The driver had 2 phones mounted on his dashboard, one for GPS, the other streaming Sophie's live feed. The chat was flooded with worried messages. Aw. Thanks for caring everyone. This little kitty is fine. James came right on time. No hospital needed. No way. Haven't told him how I feel yet. Stop spreading rumors, guys. James is right here watching. And yes, he's absolutely wonderful. I checked my phone to find 2 angry texts. My assistant says you missed the project planning meeting. Where the hell are you? Get to the office now. It was just a short walk. Why are you being such a drama queen? The hypocrisy was unreal. That evening, I was curled up on the couch watching Netflix after applying my medicine. I heard the keypad beeping, followed by James's sarcastic voice. And here I thought you'd finally grown up, being so quiet lately. But you were just waiting to pull something like this. Finding the TV too loud, he marched over and unplugged it. Rachel, are you completely clueless? This project meeting took 2 weeks to prepare. Do you have any idea how much money we lose when projects get delayed? I looked up to meet his disgusted expression and watched his face freeze. His eyes locked onto the bandage on my forehead, then noticed my scraped hands and feet. What happened to you? I looked away, keeping my voice casual. Nothing much, just got hit by a scooter on my way to work. James's expression flickered, and he stepped forward hesitantly to check my injuries. Why didn't you call me? I pulled away from his touch, letting out a bitter laugh. It's just a minor injury. I know your streamers are more important. What was the point of calling him anyway? He'd just launch into accusations without even asking what happened. When had he ever actually cared about why I called? If he wouldn't come when I needed him before, why would he now? James tensed at my words, standing up with a cold laugh. Rachel, is the attitude really necessary? Fine, leaving you on the street was wrong, but are you 5? Who gets hit crossing the street? I just stared at him silently. See? Even a simple statement gets twisted into me being childish and dramatic. I ignored him and stood to go to the bedroom. Noticing my limp, James's expression softened. He sighed and came over to help. I'll sleep in our room tonight, so I can keep an eye on you. James hadn't gone to bed before midnight in ages. Because Sophie complained about getting hate comments on her streams and worried about getting depressed, she insisted he keep her company while streaming. So every night James would sit in his home office, working while watching her stream, occasionally joining in with sweet little interactions with the streamer. I'd fought with him about it, crying and arguing, but couldn't change his mind. James insisted it was just work, and eventually threatened divorce until I gave in. I didn't reject his offer tonight, but when he tried to put his arm around me, I said quietly, James, I want a divorce. Asking for a divorce hit harder than I expected. James stormed out that night and didn't come home for a week. This was his typical response when I made him angry, proving how little he cared about what I'd said. In the past, his emotional abuse would have kept me up all night, desperately calling him over and over to apologize, begging for forgiveness. But now I was busy job hunting, with no time to worry about him. After all, I couldn't keep working at his company after the divorce. One day after work, James called. Him reaching out first was his way of offering an olive branch. Refusing would make me the difficult one. The department hit its targets for the first half. There's a cocktail party tonight. I'll pick you up. I waited outside the office for nearly 20 minutes before James finally showed up with Sophie. Hey Rach, I get car sick, so James said I could sit in front. Sophie chirped sweetly. You don't mind, right? James gripped the steering wheel tightly, watching me nervously as if afraid I'd snap and attack Sophie. But I just quietly opened the back door. That seat wasn't meant for me anyway. During the drive, I stared out the window while Sophie kept trying to flirt with James. Unusually, he remained cold toward her, barely responding, frequently glancing at me in the rearview mirror. At the hotel, James's close friend Steven came out to greet us with forced politeness. Rachel, hey, sorry, my brain's been scrambled with work. Should have texted you about this. Steven was James's best friend and knew all about his affairs. Whenever James wanted to bring Sophie along, he wouldn't invite me, since I always ruined things for James. It's fine, I won't stay long. Steven looked surprised but held his tongue. During the party, after making his rounds, James sat beside me with a piece of cake. Eat something. You skipped lunch. You must be hungry. Before I could refuse, Sophie appeared with her phone. She was live streaming. Found you, James. Kitty's been looking everywhere. Oh, you mean Rachel? James brought her cake because she hasn't eaten dinner. James and I aren't dating, everyone. I quickly turned away to avoid the camera and stood up to leave. I was standing on the balcony getting some air when James followed me out, his voice uncertain. I didn't know Sophie would be streaming. Everything they say in the chat isn't true. I'm just playing along for her stream. I've asked her to stop. I nodded indifferently and went back to the party. The host was on stage talking about the company's future. Sophie approached me with a champagne flute, tapping it against my drink with a sweet smile. Hey Rach, my followers all say James and I are perfect together. Who do you think he likes more, you or me? I turned away. You should ask him that, but I think he prefers you. Sophie leaned in closer, eyes narrowing as she giggled. Really? I think so too. Something felt wrong. I tried to step back, but Sophie had already thrown herself to the floor. Before I could react, someone shoved my shoulder hard. My lower back slammed into the table edge, drink spilling everywhere. Sudden, intense pain shot through my abdomen, making me dizzy. I clutched my stomach, steadying myself against the table as I felt something warm running down my legs. James rushed to help Sophie up, yelling at me in front of everyone. Rachel, when will you stop being crazy? You. Then he saw the blood. His eyes widened in realization, his voice shaking. You're pregnant? James frantically pulled out his phone to call an ambulance. Sophie grabbed his hand, then reached into her purse and offered me a pad, acting concerned. Did you leak through, Rach? Here, take this. James stopped dialing and stared at me for a moment, before throwing Sophie's pad at me, mortified. Go clean yourself up. Stop embarrassing everyone. Then he left, holding Sophie's hand. With Sophie around, we couldn't even maintain a facade of harmony. I forced myself outside and called my best friend, fighting through the pain. Nina, can you take me to the hospital? I closed my eyes, my voice cracking. I think I'm having a miscarriage. As I finished speaking, intense dizziness hit me. I heard hurried footsteps and an anxious voice nearby as my vision went black, and I collapsed into warm arms.